So how did we decide we needed a agricultural weed ID network for New York? And the steps that we went through for this was that for about 5 years, while Tony DiTommaso was going around talking with people, he was saying, insect people have a place where their stuff gets diagnosed. Pathogen people have stuff where their stuff gets diagnosed. Why don't we have a place where you can diagnose weeds? And people said, I don't know, gosh, it would be nice if there was something. So then in 2017, when we wrote a grant for that, we looked around to see if there was anybody else interested in partnering with us. And in fact, we did get 5 or 6 partners from around the state who were interested in the program. So we thought, cool. We put in our grant, and once we got it, then we had some funding to do a weed ID network, but we didn't have a super detailed plan. So we started, I went to Agricultural and Service and the Crop Advisor meeting and the Weed Science Society meeting and talked with people about what would this look like in New York and what do you think would be useful? And we got a lot of really informative feedback on that. I also did the same thing with the Tri-Lab meeting in Soil and Crop Science, which is Matt Ryan, Tony DiTommaso, and Laura Drinkwater's labs. They all meet together and got their feedback on this project as well. This is one of the reasons, this is actually my first project. These are all pigweed species that you find in New York now. They all look pretty similar, and most people just think, pigweed is pigweed is pigweed. We have 3 or 4 species, they all act the same. It doesn't matter at all. These 3 all act the same. They emerge at the same time. They emerge fairly quickly, and they're managed with the same either chemicals or management actions, depending on whether you're conventional or organic. These 2 are really different. They both emerge over the full growing season. They both produce a ton of seed. They're both, especially Palmer amaranth, is huge and is really competitive with crops up to 60 to 70% crop loss in a bad situation. And they're both have some substantially resistant multiple herbicide mode of action resistant populations, particularly in the Midwest. And so they're also relatively new to New York. So communicating to New York farmers, hey, you should be looking at your pigweeds so that you know what you have, because if you have one of those 2, it's really a problem. This is the kind of communication that we are trying to produce about why you should care about what weed is in your field, even if you're a conventional farmer of some kind. This is the herbicide resistance map for New York out of the Weed Science Society for America. These all have 26 populations of weed-resistant weeds, of herbicide-resistant weeds. Theoretically, we have 4. We're actually working on herbicide trials for 2 more right now. And the last addition to this list was in the late 90s. So it's probable that we have several more herbicide-resistant weed populations that we just haven't nailed down yet. New York is a really diverse state from an agricultural perspective. We have a lot of field crops, but we also have a substantial grape, hop, and berry industries. We have a lot of veg, particularly for the local markets. And that makes it hard to provide weed information for growers in New York. In New York, we have this great tool for submitting invasive species information called IMAP Invasives. They just put out their latest upgrade, which is going to be awesome. It just came out last week. And the natural areas in New York are really invested in this. And they've done a great job of populating the New York map with what is in New York, especially for high priority species. But because when you put a point in there, it shows up on the public facing map, farmers don't like to use it. So how do we work with these, either work with these folks or find another platform so that you can report your read and it shows up as, it lights up your county and not your farm, which we think would be much more accessible for growers. And this is the stage where farmers need to know what they have, because management, especially in organic systems, but also for farmers who are spraying, management happens very early. And so learning, you can know if you walk out in August, oh, that's a lamb scourge. But do you know what it looks like when it's just a cotyledon or two and maybe a leaf? That's a lot harder. And so that's a skill set that definitely needs some growth in New York. And these are the other two reasons that we really need a weed ID network. Traditionally, field crops people always went to Russ, and vegetable growers always went to Robin. And we lost both of these awesome researchers in the last few years. And now there's no obvious person to go to for weed identification in those areas. So we want to build this weed ID network. Ultimately, we want to support growers all over the state, but practically, it's difficult to reach those growers. And in fact, when they have weed problems, they tend to call either Extension or their crop advisor. And so what we want to do is reach out to growers through these two agencies. We have sort of short-term, mid-term, and this is why we do this kind of work, level objectives. We want to build this network so that we can provide expert weed ID services. There's a great weed ID listserv already for master gardeners, but there isn't a comparable thing for farmers. So we'd like to make it so that people can just send us questions and we can answer. We'd like strong attendance at some workshops in the next couple of years. We'd like to provide focused information for different commodity crops for different regions. The muck onions have a very different set of weeds from regular upland onions, for instance. And we want to try to pull together some spatial data for where are these problem weed populations in New York, because that's something that if you want to know that right now, you have to know that what you do is you call Mike Stanyard. He's the one who knows. So if we could figure out a way to get that in an acceptable way for farmers onto a website where at least you can see what region in the state we have given species, that would be helpful. And we'd like to find new problem weeds when they arrive. So our sort of longer term objections are improved weed ID skills, better pest management practices for weeds that are based on the species you have in your field, and better weed management planning, faster learning curve for this new generation of growers that's coming up that often don't come from a farming background, and so they don't have any weed ID experience until they get out by their farm or start leasing, and then they're, what is all this green stuff in my field? And we'd like to get better at tracking where these weeds are. That's probably the closest thing to my heart, and the place where I think this project could have the best long-term impact. And these are why we do these things. So our activities are put together a website where you can submit a weed for identification with a photo. If we can't ID it from the photo, we'll email you a shipping label and information on how to collect it and send it to us in some form that it doesn't show up as a shriveled little stick. And also a place to house the information on what weeds are in New York. What do they look like? How do you manage them? And specifically, there are these well-known complexes that are hard to deal with. What's that vine I have in my field? Is it a morning glory? Is it a bindweed? Or is it wild buckwheat? Wild buckwheat, they all kind of look the same. And the pigweeds and some other mustards, stuff like that. This is our network as of right now. This is the New York vegetable team. This is about 2/5 of the field crops team. Janice does field crops. Sharon Bachman is a woman of many tool sets in Erie County. Tony DiTomaso is the PI. Dan Olmsted is helping with tool development, and Brian Brown is with New York IPM. There's a lot of materials. This is one of the things that I'm struggling with as I'm building this website. There's a lot of materials already available. These are all existing materials for identifying pigweeds. So I probably don't have to do this video again. How do I get all of this information in a place that says Cornell University cares about this stuff and has tailored this for you in New York without making another video? Because this one's really good. I've been talking with Jamie Cummings, who does field crop stuff. She manages the field crop call. She's also putting together some fact sheets. And so we're thinking about coming up with combining the IPM and some of the other fact sheet templates so that they all look the same, maybe have different logos, different color coding, but at least you can find your way through them pretty readily. Then we'll be doing some workshops. We're definitely doing muck onions and soybeans and weed seedlings and herbicide resistance identification and other things as we add more network members with other interests. And in the 2021, which is the final year of this grant, we'll probably also present some of our more finished products at grower meetings to evaluate whether or not we did what we set out to do. There are some very, very basic metrics. How many people submitted samples, how many trainings, and then also workshop surveys. And at the end of the 3-year grant, we'd like to do a survey of the network participants to find out whether or not it was useful to them and whether or not they will use this going forward. And maybe a 6 month to 1 year after the last contact with the program survey for anybody who participates in the program, saying, tell us how you use this data, this information that you got from our project. That's it. So if you guys have any thoughts on directions that you'd like to see the project go, or if you simply have questions.
Or input for Carrie? Do you have a timeline for how you'd like this all to develop and generalize more?
Yeah, I was actually just working on that a couple nights ago. Hoping to get some kind of website up in the next month so that it's there for the field season, and then start populating it with the outreach materials and start reaching out to try to grow the network a little bit. I've already had, in the last 48 hours, we've had 2 people have weed ID questions that have been funneled to our lab, so I can use those as blog posts and start building information that way. Next year we'll do workshops, and in year 3 we'll do workshops. And I'm already in contact with IMAP. They do think that with their new platform they'll be able to have confidential species, which would not show location information except to very high-level users. So meeting with them to see if they think they're willing to expand their scope of work to include agricultural weeds, which are in many cases native species. That's it.
Time for one more question.
The repository will stay put for a while, hopefully.
The online repository?
Even if the funding goes away.
Yes, because it's going to be tied into Tony's website.
Good.
We'll also update Tony's website. And I'm hoping to hook it into Jen Thomas Murphy's stuff and Organic Cornell. And if I can tweak my outreach materials to suit the needs of the various Cornell programs, all the better. And the reason that I want IMAP to take on the formal reporting is because it's only a 3-year grant. You know, it's fine to say, send it to Tony, but if something important comes up, we need to have a way to report it.
Very true.
Yeah, it's a good question.